Hello and welcome. You've joined us on Business Lunch. It's a historic day for India as the Indian Foreign Secretary Vijay Gokhale confirms a non-military preemptive strike at the biggest training camp of the Jaish-e-Mohammed in Balakot and adds that large number of terrorists and Fedayeen operatives have been eliminated. That had its share of impact on the markets today, but markets at this point are off the low point of the day. In fact, trading at the highest point of the day, but still down in the red. It's the banks which are really taking the highest knock today. It's the Bank Nifty and most of the large cap banks which are beaten down, but TCS is really holding it firm at the moment. So that's a little bit about the markets, but the big story is definitely coming in from the airstrikes that India had done, and that is a historic day as well. We'll have Shireen Bhan as well as Parikshit Luthra joining us on this big event. Shireen, you go first.
Well, thanks very much. As we've been pointing out, it is now official. There is an official statement that's come in from the Foreign Secretary on the non-military preemptive strike that India has conducted against the largest JEM camp. It's also important to note that India has used the words preemptive. The Foreign Secretary explaining and making that distinction that this is not a retaliatory action because of Pulwama, but making it clear that there was credible information, credible intelligence information, that there were more attacks being planned on Indian soil, and hence it was a preemptive attack on India's part. A measured statement there coming in from the Foreign Secretary, also pointing out that India had shared information about the JEM installations, about the JEM camps with Pakistan for years now, but there was no concrete or credible action that Pakistan had taken against these terror outfits, forcing India's hand, so to speak. It's also important to note that this is the very first time that the Indian Air Force has been deployed. Air assets have been used for the first time in this strike against the largest JEM camp. This was an option that was considered twice in the past but was not used. But this time it has been the Indian Air Force that has been used, and that's largely, as General Huda was explaining to us, on account of the fact that it is inclement weather, winter situation, which has also prompted ground operations to be difficult, and hence the Indian Air Force has stepped in and taken this course of action, which is perhaps the most secure course of action at this point in time. The question now is on the possibility of escalation. And let's just put the context clear. With what has happened today, India has drawn a red line that it will not tolerate terror attacks on Indian soil being launched out of territory like Pakistan. And it's also made it very clear that this could be the response in the future as well. So this action on India's part should act as a significant deterrent. Separately, India also making it clear that it will continue to step up its diplomatic attempts at bringing Pakistan to book. In fact, we will go across to Parikshit in just a short while, because the Indian government, the Ministry of External Affairs, has now reached out to foreign envoys, and that meeting is currently underway in New Delhi. So we'll get Parikshit to comment on that. So it's a diplomatic offensive that India, which launched after Pulwama, that exercise also continues today. Now, the possibility of escalation, and while Pakistan will try and address its domestic constituency as would be expected, and since morning the tweets from the Pakistan army have suggested that this strike was not significant, not material, but they have of course acknowledged the fact that there was a strike. But can Pakistan afford to escalate is the question, given the fact that it is facing a very, very precarious economic situation. It's still awaiting that bailout from the IMF. It requires the capital, and also the fact that foreign countries, partners of India in the war against terror, have come out very strongly and swiftly in condemning the action in Pulwama and condemning the JEM, and asking Pakistan to put a lid, so to speak, on terror installations operating out of their territory. But let's go across now to Parikshit Luthra. Parikshit, India continues to step up the diplomatic efforts as well to try and bring Pakistan to book. Foreign envoys being called by the Ministry of External Affairs?
That's right. In fact, if I can just ask my camera person to turn, Shireen, the Chinese envoy has just arrived at the Ministry of External Affairs, and there we can see on our screens the Chinese ambassador walking in to the Ministry of External Affairs. Sushma Swaraj is there. She came about an hour back. You had envoys from US, UK, Russia, Indonesia, from at least 6 or 7 countries here. We just saw them stepping out. The Russian envoy, the Australian envoy are still inside. I think through the day we are going to see envoys of all countries coming here at the Ministry of External Affairs. But this meeting with the Chinese envoy assumes a lot of significance. We'll await a readout from the Ministry of External Affairs on this meeting, but it is clearly to brief the envoys on that preemptive strike that took place in the early hours of 26th February 2019. The fact that the Foreign Secretary, India's top diplomat, was chosen to give the first word, give the first statement on that strike that took place on Pakistani terror camps is extremely important. This was an Air Force operation, but the fact that the Indian government did not put or field any of its army officers or Air Force officers or defense personnel is very significant. It seemed as if India wanted to avoid any kind of escalation. I remember immediately after the Uri strike, the government had fielded the DGMO and an MEA official to brief at the Ministry of External Affairs headquarters. That did not happen this time around. The Foreign Secretary came, used very careful words, saying that we had credible intelligence. This was a preemptive strike. This was a strike in self-defense. There was a threat to other parts of the country that there could be Fedayeen attacks, and that's why India wanted to deter it. The location was carefully chosen in order to avoid civilian casualties in Pakistan. So very carefully worded statement from the Foreign Office. At the same time, avoiding any kind of provocation as well. And it seems now India wants to get its envoys on board. In fact, what I'm told by my sources in the government is that this diplomatic groundwork for this anti-terror strike had begun soon after the Pulwama attack, with the Foreign Secretary briefing 25 envoys, getting that strong statement issued by the UN Security Council. In fact, India wanted to tell the international community that Pakistan stands exposed when it comes to fighting terror and fighting terror groups on its soil.
Hey, Parisha, thanks a lot for that. So carefully chosen words. The fact that they are not looking to provocate or at the same time not looking to escalate this matter, calming the nerves, and which is what perhaps also explains the sort of recovery that we've seen on the markets from the lows. In fact, on that note, let's hear out what the Foreign Secretary Vijay Keshav Gokhale said in his brief about what transpired at the LOC.
On the 14th of February 2019, a suicide terror attack was conducted by a Pakistan-based terrorist organization, the Jaish-e-Mohammed, leading to the martyrdom of 40 brave Jawans of the CRPF. The Jaish-e-Mohammed has been active in Pakistan for the last 2 decades, and it is led by Masood Azhar with its headquarters in Bahawalpur. This organization, which is proscribed by the United Nations, has been responsible for a series of terrorist attacks, including on the Indian Parliament in December 2001 and the Pathankot Air Base in January 2016. Information regarding the location of training camps in Pakistan and in Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir has been provided to Pakistan from time to time. Pakistan, however, denies their existence. The existence of such massive training facilities capable of training hundreds of jihadis could not have functioned without the knowledge of the Pakistan authorities. India has been repeatedly urging Pakistan to take action against the Jaish-e-Mohammed to prevent jihadis from being trained and armed inside Pakistan. In an intelligence-led operation in the early hours of today, India struck the biggest training camp of the Jaish-e-Mohammed in Balakot. In this operation, a very large number of Jaish-e-Mohammed terrorists, trainers, senior commanders, and groups of jihadis who were being trained for Fedayeen action were eliminated. This facility at Balakot was headed by Maulana Yusuf Azhar, alias Ustad Ghori, the brother-in-law of Masood Azhar, chief of the JEM. The government of India is firmly and resolutely committed to taking all necessary measures to fight the menace of terrorism. Hence, this non-military preemptive action was specifically targeted at the Jaish-e-Mohammed camp. The selection of the target was also conditioned by our desire to avoid civilian casualties. We expect that Pakistan lives up to its public commitment and takes follow-up action to dismantle all JEM and other camps and hold the terrorists accountable for their actions.
All right, so India really strikes back 12 days after the Pulwama terror attack. With that, we'll slip into a short breather on the show. But up next, we continue our focus on the Balakot attack, and we spoke to a whole host of dignitaries on what they make of the IAF strike. We get you all the snippets of that up next. Stay tuned.